Hi, and welcome back. I think there's this perception in the United States that we no longer manufacture anything. And Brian Westbury at First Trust put together some really great charts that I wanted to share with people to kind of throw stones at that idea. And I think that gets a lot of media hype today, given the trade environment. But I think what you're going to find interesting about these data points I'm going to show you is that we do make things, but we make different things. Things that we used to make here, we don't anymore. And things we never made here years ago, we do make here. And so I think sometimes it's a hard thing to get our arms wrapped around when things change and we're still holding on to thoughts of the past. So let's get into some of the data. Let me share my screen. So I like to call this screen or this first chart more with less. And as you can see, the amount of manufacturing payrolls, the amount of people that work in the manufacturing sector has steadily declined from the 1940s to today. I think it was around a high of 39%, and now there's a low of about 8%. But you can also see on the other axis, if I could say that right, is industrial production. So even though the amount of people working in manufacturing has gone down steadily, the amount of what we're outputting, creating, has gone up about tenfold. So this, again, idea that we don't manufacture anything in the United States just doesn't hold water. We do. We just, again, to my earlier point, we just make different things. And as far as the top manufacturing nations, I think this is what gets a lot of people fired up when they see that, I think about 15 years ago, China overtook the U.S. as far as the top manufacturing country. But as you can see here, the U.S. is still a solid number 2. Like we're ahead of Japan by almost double, Germany by more than that. So again, point is that there's this misconception out there that the United States just doesn't manufacture anything anymore, and that's not true. And this last slide is like, I call it quality over quantity, and I think this really shows the direction of where we want to go. We don't want to make toasters or big screen TVs here. We don't have a competitive advantage over countries like South Korea, China, Asian, countries that do have that. And when it comes to trade, there's this fine line between that word competitive advantage. We want to make here in the States what we're really good at, and then import other goods that are at lower cost that we're not good at making, that we're not cost efficient at. And I think that's where, and I agree with the current administration trying to find some kind of harmony between communities, towns, cities that have been gutted, basically ravaged by the outsourcing of manufacturing, some types of it, overseas. But then knowing how corporations work here in the United States, and I want to come back to this slide, the first one I showed, is that corporations are always going to try to keep improving, which means taking cost out. And one of the biggest components of manufacturing cost are material and labor. I know because I worked in corporate America in manufacturing for decades. And so there's this idea that I have is like, we want to make the machines that make the machines. We want to have people that repair the machines that make the machines. That's high value. We don't necessarily want people on a manufacturing line putting little screws into an iPhone or making toys. That's another big one because most of the toys are actually manufactured overseas. They're not manufactured here in the States anymore. And the reason why that is because it's cheaper to do so overseas. But do you really want to have that low skill, low paying job? Probably not. And I think that's where, as a country, we've allowed some people to get left behind because their skills haven't caught up to what is required in modern day manufacturing. And again, I think you can see that in this data point, this chart here, where it shows the value of what we do manufacture here is actually quite high, much higher, almost 5 times, 6 times higher than China. So what I wanted to get, my point again, I wanted to get across is that we do manufacture things here in the United States. They're just different. And they'll continue to be different. And there will always be this drive to take cost out of the manufacturing process. That's all for this week. We'll see you next time.